Hi friends, it's Amy. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to go through the 15 books that I read in October. Look at this Hocus Pocus theme, guys. I'm so proud of this. As I said, I read 15 books in October, and thank goodness for audiobooks because my reading felt so broken at the beginning of the month. And audiobooks gave me so much comfort and really made me feel like I was actually getting somewhere in my books and in my reading, because I have so many books that I want to read that I don't want to waste my time. And I did feel a little bit like I wasted my time with some of my books this month. So, I mean, a little bit, not a lot. I did have an enjoyable month. In those 15 books, I read 4,898 pages. I had 3 physical books, 6 digital books, all ARCs, and 8 adult books, some combinations in there. I read all 15 fiction and 0 nonfiction, which makes me feel a little bit guilty, but when your reading's broken, you don't go outside your comfort zone very often. 10 of these books were for an adult audience, 2 for YA, and 3 were middle grade. I did have 5 5-star reads, 3 4.5-star reads, 4 2 4-star reads, 1 3.5-star read, 2 3-star reads, and 2 2.5-star reads or lower. I read 158 pages a day on average. Thank you, audiobooks. I had about 326 pages per book, and my average rating was 4.1. I read 6 ARCs, as I said, no nonfiction. And this month for Silent Book Club, we read thrillers and creepy books, which actually was good, although a little outside my comfort zone. I had 2 buddy reads, 2 rereads, and those 2 plus 1 more were read-alongs. I wanted to do another read-along and didn't get to it in the month of October. So there you have it. Those are the stats. On to what I actually read. The first book that I read was Whatever It Takes by Kathryn R. Biel. This was an ARC sent to me by Kathryn Biel herself. I read the first book in this series. This is the 3rd and final book of the series. I read the first book and absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite books of 2020. It was beautifully written and it had mental health representation that was so real and raw. It was wonderful. I felt seen reading the first book in the series. That first book is Take a Chance on Me. The second book, Vision of Love, also really good. Really, really, really liked it. Not as much as Take a Chance on Me. Whatever It Takes, really, really loved. Really, really liked. Again, definitely my favorite is still the first one, but Center Stage Trilogy by Kathryn Biel is beautiful. The Addison Theater is this little itty bitty theater outside of New York. It is struggling financially in the first book, and the series takes you through the rising again of this series. It's just so wonderful. They're little romances. They're really funny. I just really liked them. So that was Whatever It Takes by Kathryn R. Biel. The next book that I finished was The Invisible Husband of Frick Island by Colleen Oakley. And I heard about this book from the Friends in Fiction podcast. I really liked it. It also had mental health representation in it that felt very authentic at the beginning, but then sort of felt a little off the nose towards the end. I gave it 3.5 stars. I really did enjoy it. I just felt let down ultimately, but I really enjoyed my reading experience, and I couldn't give it less than 3 stars because I really enjoyed my reading experience. But I just felt like it went a little slow at some points, and I felt let down at the end. It didn't come to the climax that I wanted it to come to, which I'm not the author, so it doesn't really matter what I think, but but I really did like it, and I was really fascinated by the concept. We had a journalist who was looking into Piper, who lives on Frick Island. Her husband passes away in a freak accident, and she goes on living thinking her husband is still alive. And the whole town, instead of telling her that her husband died, goes along with it. And it is just a really interesting look at how people deal with grief. And it's really, really interesting. The next book that I finished was Cress. This was one of my rereads. I absolutely love the Lunar Chronicles. I'm so glad that I'm taking part in the Lunar Along, even though these are books that I've already read. They're so worth rereading, and they're so worth sitting and enjoying. I just love Cress. Cress is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles. The next book that I read is also in the Lunar Chronicles, and that is Fairest. This was also a reread. This is also a reread. I don't love Fairest like I do the rest of the Lunar Chronicles, but I can really appreciate it for what it is. Fairest is the backstory of the main villain in the Lunar Chronicles, Levana. It's her backstory, and it doesn't make you feel sorry for Levana. It didn't make me feel sorry for Levana. Apparently, it made some people feel sorry for Levana. But it really does shed a lot of light on a character that is pure evil. She is a character that I do really love to hate, but there's such a change in tone and flow in Fairest, which there kind of has to be because it's a prequel and not actually part of the series, that just really threw me off. And I gave it 3 stars the first time I read it, and I actually liked it a little bit more this time than the last time. So I don't know what to do with that information, but I really am glad that I still reread it. I wasn't going to, but I decided that I wanted to, because when I got done with Cress, I just wanted more Lunar Chronicles, and I didn't want to move on to winter yet. So I did. I read it. The next book that I read was Small Spaces by Kathryn Arden. And Small Spaces is a middle grade thriller, and I had goosebumps the whole time I was reading this. I read it in 2 sittings. I couldn't get enough of Ollie and Coco and Brian, the 3 main characters. Their unlikely friendship is just on point. I really liked Olivia as a character, and I loved how she grew as a character throughout the book. Ollie is going through the loss of her mother, and her class takes a field trip to a farm. And while they're on this farm, they encounter some very strange and crazy things that might have something to do with the mysterious book that Ollie found the night before. So good. The next book that I read was an ngARC, and that is Ghosts, Private Eyes, and Dead Guys by Jennifer Fischetto. This is the 6th book in the Gianna Mancini series. I really enjoy this series. It's very funny. Gianna is a very strong character, and the way that she uses her gift to help dead people, but also cares about the still living people in her life is really enjoyable. She is quirky and just a lot of fun to read about. This one had a very personal element to the mystery, and I was totally there for it. The next book that I read was the thriller Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. I wanted to love this book. I love Scooby-Doo. He's the bomb. And the premise of this book is a group of kids who get together and they solve mysteries on this island. And they're always unmasking villains who are pretending to have supernatural powers, and they get called meddling kids. Sound familiar? It is largely inspired by Scooby-Doo, and that's why I wanted to love it, but I just was pulled out of the story so many times, and I was in it enough that I wanted to know what was going to happen. I was in it enough that I was a little creeped out and had some goosebumps happening, but I just wasn't in it enough to care a lot about the characters. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. The whole time I was reading, I was just like, I don't know about this. I don't know that I like it. But I wanted to know what happened. So I kept reading. But there is definitely an audience for this book. It just maybe wasn't me. The next book that I read was a middle grade ngARC, Long Road to the Circus by Betsy Bird. This book is so fun. I actually then received it as my bookshelf Thomasville September mystery shelf subscription, and I was so excited for it. I was so excited to put it in my classroom. The main character is Susie Bowles, and she is this whip smart, super sassy, 12-ish year old girl who wants nothing more than to someday get out of her small town farm community in Michigan, 1920s. She feels like she can do that if she spends more time with Madame Marinette, who is the only one in their community who has successfully left and been able to see the world. Then she came back. She's known very well for being an ostrich rider. So, of course, Susie decides to learn how to ride ostriches. It's so funny how she goes about trying to tame this ostrich and learn how to ride it. And it's just her interaction with her family is amazing. Her interaction with her friend is amazing. It's just a really fun novel, and I just loved it so much. So I'm really excited that was the Bookshelf Thomasville shelf subscription. So I have that book the physical copy of that book to put into my classroom. The next book that I finished was The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. This was a book of the month pick. I actually had the opportunity to buddy read this with new bookish friend Jamie, who mentioned on my haul video that she also had The Personal Librarian, and I am so glad that I read this book with somebody, because I don't know that I would have stuck it out. Maybe I would have. I probably would have. I don't know. I really enjoyed the fact that I was buddy reading this book more than I enjoyed the book. I mean, it was a solid 3-star read. I really found the entire topic fascinating. The main character is Belle DaCosta Green. She is the real life, she was the real life personal librarian to J.P. Morgan. She took the world by storm and was one of the most successful women in the world. And she was also passing as white, as her family was actually Black. And she had to keep that secret her whole life in order to be successful. It was a fascinating look at her life, and I really did love that. But there were just so many things that I didn't want as much of her personal life, I guess. I wanted more of the business side of acquiring books and working with the other buyers that she worked with. And I didn't want as much romance as there was in the book. They were rough romance. Like, they weren't good romances. And the authors couldn't change history to write this story, and they didn't. And I'm glad they didn't. However, there were parts of it that were tough to read. And I'm glad that I read it, and I'm really glad that I had somebody to talk to while I was reading it. I really enjoyed a lot of this book, but there were some parts that were difficult to read. And once I picked up the book and was reading, I could read for a while, and I just wanted to keep on reading, but it took me longer to pick it up in between, which is a little bit of an indication that I wasn't liking it as much as I wanted to like it. I am so glad that I know this story, and I'm so glad to know that this story was fairly historically accurate. They played around with the timeline a little bit, but most of what was in this book was actually true. And I loved diving into rabbit holes with this book and looking up the different people that were in it. And I learned a lot of different terms that I didn't know were actually common back in these days. I really learned a lot from this book, and I really enjoyed it. So I really enjoyed that. I'm really glad that I read it, and I had so much fun reading it with Jamie. So highly, highly recommend a buddy read with Jamie if you ever get a chance. So the next book that I read was The Suntown Motel by Simone St. James. And I actually listened to this. I started it. This was Krista from Books and Jams Patreon book club in the month of October. And I started it like the Saturday before the club was happening. And I knew I wasn't going to finish it in time. And I was fine with that. I was kind of busy that day. I couldn't make it, but I did really want to read the book, and I'm so glad I did, you guys. It is phenomenal. I don't know if there's anybody that hasn't ever heard of this book before, but Simone St. James creates this super chilly, creepy hotel setting and layers two different stories on top of each other. One in 1982 born, and one in 2017. And these two stories layer together so well. And you're introduced to a character in 2017, and then you hear about how that character came into the story in 1982, and it's just fabulous. Carly is the main character in 2017, and she is the niece of Viv, who disappeared without a trace in 1982. And other disappearances and other murders were also taking place around the same time that nobody ever really connected before. And Carly decides to go back in 2017 to look into these murders. So she ends up working at the Sundown Motel at the same place that her aunt worked, at the same shift that her aunt worked. And the creepy factor just creeps you out the whole time. I just loved it so much. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. The next book that I read was The Lost World by Michael Crichton. This was part of the Jurassic Park read-along that Danny from Spinelli Speaks and a whole crew of wonderful booktubers sponsored. It was a last-minute decision to go ahead and read the second book. I was kind of feeling like I felt good reading the first book, reading Jurassic Park last month. It was great. I really loved it, and I thought maybe that's the end of my journey with Jurassic Park, because how can it be any better to go on to The Lost World? And let me tell you, it's not better, but I am still glad I read it. Lost World, I did not feel was anywhere near the caliber of Jurassic Park. I did enjoy the new characters that you meet. I loved that Malcolm was still there, still an awesome character, but it felt like Michael Crichton was like, okay, so I had 2 kids last time, so I got to have 2 kids. I had a really sexy girl scientist, and I have to have a sexy girl scientist. And I had a debonair, whatever. And like, there was a parallel character for all of these other characters, and it was so weird. And I don't know, like, I just didn't enjoy it as much. But I really did enjoy seeing the aftermath of Jurassic Park in The Lost World. And I liked how you saw this kind of circular motion happening. And I did enjoy that. So I did enjoy my reading experience, and I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I found it on audio. I don't think I would have been able to read it in physical form, especially not in October, but definitely not, but I did enjoy it. The next book that I read was, again, an ngARC, and that was An Elderly Lady Must Not Be Crossed by Helene Turston. It is the second book in a duology about 90-year-old Maud. The first book, An Elderly Lady Is Up to No Good, was basically showing you all about 90-year-old serial killer Maud. She is a wonderful character. It was hilarious. I don't even know what else to say. It's so funny. If you have not read An Elderly Lady Is Up to No Good, read it. If you have access to the audiobook, listen to it, because it's hilarious and I loved it. An Elderly Lady Must Not Be Crossed kind of takes place a little bit after the events of the first one. It's kind of separated into short stories, and Maud is on a plane to visit South Africa to vacation, and she really wants to get away from the police who are starting to suspect that she might actually be a serial killer. So the story is told in the present, where she's in South Africa, and it's also told in a bunch of flashbacks from when she was really young to when she started as a teacher to throughout her life. So it's told with some flashbacks while she's on the plane, and then it goes to her in South Africa and her journey in South Africa, and it is wonderful. I really, really enjoyed it and highly recommend it. I did enjoy An Elderly Lady Must Not Be, or An Elderly Lady Is Up to No Good a little bit more, but I think that I would have really enjoyed this one in audiobook as well. It actually came out on October 5th, and I did read the second half of it. I listened to the second half of it, and I wish I would have listened to the whole thing, but I felt like it was taking me too long to read it, and I found it on Hoopla and was really excited, so I decided to just listen to it, and I'm kind of glad that I did because it was so good. So good. I just loved it. The next book that I finished was Neverseen by Shannon Messenger. This is the 4th book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series that I am buddy reading with Krista from Books and Jams, and I love this series. I cannot get enough. I just want to find out more and more what is happening with Sophie and her crew of wonderful characters. I just love it. I loved the new characters that entered this world. I loved the new settings that were introduced in this one, and I can't get into it a whole lot because it is the 4th book in the series, but I'm really looking forward to reading the 5th book this month because it's already November, but I'm so looking forward to Lodestar. The next book that I read was an ngARC from NetGalley. It was a cozy mystery, Playing Possum by Dane McCassin. I always put the L in the wrong spot when I say it. Dane McCassin. This is book number 3 in the Two Sisters Pet Detective cozy mystery series, and it follows Gwen, who is a retired high school English teacher, and her best friend Nora, who is a serial marrier. She's addicted to matrimony. I don't know. She's had like 50 ex-husbands. One of Nora's ex-husbands, has named her, Nora, the executor of his will. The catch is he's not actually dead by anybody's knowledge. He has just been missing for a while, and his kids want him declared dead. So Nora wants to look into this and see if there's something fishy going on with this situation. So Nora and Gwen are on the case again. It was a really fun mystery. It was really intriguing. Really, there was so much mystery about what was actually happening in this book. It was kind of fun to try to figure it out. And I really enjoyed Nora and Gwen putting each other in their place and not letting them get away with being mean to each other or being judgy about other people. And I really liked that because Gwen as a character can be very judgy, and it's really difficult sometimes to read her because she's such a judgy main character. But Nora balances Gwen out so well that it just really is a fun pair to watch, and I just really enjoyed it. And I've really been enjoying this series. And then the last book that I read was Manga and Murder by Leslie Langtree. This was the 20th book in the Mary Wrath Mysteries series. This series is about an ex-CIA operative who is forcibly retired and finds solace in her old hometown as a Girl Scout leader. And hilarity is always a part of these books, as is ridiculous, unrealistic situations that you just forget about because it's so funny. It's supposed to be ridiculous. I really love this series. It just feels like a comfort read to me, this whole series. And the characters really just latch onto your heart. And even the bad guys are like lovable. It's so crazy. I really like this series, and I do recommend the Mary Wrath Mysteries by Leslie Langtree. The very first one is called Merit Badge Murder, and it's worth a read if you have a chance. That's it. Those are the 15 books that I read. I really did enjoy most of my reading this month. And even the books that I didn't necessarily love, I found a lot of merit in reading them in the reading experience. So I'm going to say that this was a quite successful October. So I hope in the month of October you found a book that was absolutely the right thing at the right time for you. And I would love to know what your favorite book of October was. I think my favorite book was Keeper of the Lost Cities #4, Neverseen, and Sundown Motel, both of which were influenced by Krista from Books and Jams. I also really love Small Spaces. But I also really love my cozy mysteries. So, decisions. So until next time, I hope you find something great to read, and I'll see you later. Happy reading. Bye.